Gapada pagariga sare dharsa sagare gapada
Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. Today we are going to be reading from Canto 3, chapters 17 to 19. This is the story of Hiranyaksha and Varaha, their battle. But it's all, the story centers around a theme, and that theme is the theme around evil. We're going to try to understand, what is this thing? Is it something made up? Is it something manufactured by some religions? Or is there really something to it? Now, it's very interesting. Why, I used to always have these questions. Why would there be such a thing as evil? If God is good, why would God allow it to exist? And many of us have this kind of questioning. Why is there suffering in the world? Why is there evil in the world? Why do people do bad things? Why do bad things happen to good people? It doesn't make any sense to us. If God is all powerful, wouldn't he just eliminate evil? Wouldn't he just make life good for all of us? Wouldn't we just live happily ever after? I mean, what else is God supposed to do, right? Like, hey. And then if you want to look at it from the spiritual side, that everything is made from the energy of God, then if God is everything and God is good, then how can there be such a thing as evil? There's got to be only goodness in the world. And for a long time, that's what I believed too. I believe there couldn't be. I mean, it was there in front of me. I heard of Hitler. I heard of all the horrible things that different people who came and conquered India and who came and created slavery and who did all these things that harmed people and hurt people. And I thought, no. There can't be such a thing. There's just goodness in the world. It was a nice little delusion. But the reality is, when you open your eyes and you see what's going on, there has to be a reason, something more to it. There has to be some sense we can make out of this madness. Otherwise, our only option remains, well, just reject the whole thing of God, and maybe there isn't any such thing, because unfortunately most religions don't have answers for us. So, the way religion paints it is that, there's this really evil creature called the devil, and he's, out there having a war with God. And in this war, well, we're just calamities. We're just, collateral damage, I guess. Or maybe he's just after our souls and he's just trying to possess us and take us with him to hell. And I had a lot of questions around that. I mean, hey, if you talk about a hell and if there's fires out there, do souls get burnt in fire? The reality is they don't, right? If you took a soul is indestructible, imperishable, it's energy. So how does it get destroyed by fire? Why would it get even hurt? Why would it even suffer in fire? No, it didn't make sense to me. The real sense that I understand is that what we call evil exists, but it exists in a very unique place. It doesn't exist in the plants. It doesn't exist in the trees or in the mountains or even in the animals. It exists in our minds. Doesn't mean we made it up, but it is a choice that we made. What is that choice? Let's take a look at that. I'll first go over some of the more classic definitions of what people call evil. The Bible says it, calls it the devil, and says it comes to steal, kill, and destroy. The Bhagavad Gita, however, does not personalize it. It refers to it as qualities that we have. And it talks about how pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance are the qualities of people who have a demonic nature. So it really refers to it as a personality trait or a characteristic of a person by which they are driven. And in other words, they are driven by the desire, A, for self-aggrandizement, then to be able to, be superior or better or in control at the cost of anyone. It doesn't matter what harm they cause to anybody else, like a psychopath would do. Bhagavad Gita also says that these qualities of pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance lead to bondage. That's how you know. Whereas the path of spirituality leads to freedom. That's how you differentiate it. Freedom, again, is a quality of the mind. It's not a quality of whether you are in a jail or whether you are a citizen of a country that is free. It's a state of mind. And so is evil. It's a state of mind. In fact, the hell we live in is right here. And the heaven we can have is also right here. Maybe there are places that are hellish. Even on this planet, there are places where people suffer a lot, where the weather is like the desert or it's like, the Antarctica or something. It's pretty hellish out there. And there are places where everything is just idyllic, like here in San Diego and other places on the Mediterranean. You have these incredible places that just perfect weather and where everybody is prosperous and everyone's doing well, somewhat. It isn't quite. There is a lot of suffering even in these places. But, the tourist eye doesn't quite see that. So Bhagavad Gita also points out that the doorways to this hellish state of existence are lust, anger, and greed. And you think, well, the people who are the most greedy, they seem to have it all. They seem to be the ones who are, they've arrived, they're successful, is how we say. But are they? Are they truly successful? Are they truly happy? Are they truly satisfied? And if you really talk to them, you'll find out they're not. They're just about as miserable as everybody else. They just have their needs met, right? But their needs keep growing, and so their needs are infinitely increasing. And the more they have, the more they want, and the more they need. And so it is. It's this treadmill. Whereas the yogis learned how to live on very little and be happy, no matter what they had. So another way of understanding evil is that evil is the opposite of live. So invert the letters and you'll get live. E-V-I-L becomes L-I-V-E. And when we are not in alignment with life, when we are in disharmony with life, then we are in a state of evil. In other words, we are in a state of unhappiness or misery or hell, whatever you want. We're in disharmony with life. We're not connected to life. And we'll discuss that in just a moment. What does that mean? But the primary symptom or emotion that you would experience when you are in that hellish state or in that state, which one could call evil, which is the opposite of divine state, which is peacefulness there, that opposite state we would experience would be fear. Fear, according to what I've understood so far and seen and experienced, is the primary emotion behind evil. It drives evil. Now, whether that's the fear of, I want everyone to be subservient to me and I will do anything it takes, or whether it's just the fear of life, it depends on how far you want to go. It doesn't mean that the person who is fearful is necessarily evil, but they are being subjected to or subjugated by evil. Again, the mind. So what is the effect of this evil force upon us? Is we experience chaos in our lives. We experience doubt. We doubt ourselves. We doubt each other. We experience sabotage. It causes us to sabotage our life, to do things that aren't necessarily best for us. And once we do that, then it leads us on the path of destruction, self-destruction. Ultimately, if it can have its way, it would like us to destroy ourselves. That's the path of evil. That is that force that likes to work on us. So we always have this choice within us, the choice of whether we will turn towards the divine or whether we will turn towards the evil that is within our mind. So we live in a world of duality, a world of opposites. And what happens in duality? There is choice. See why is there duality? Like the one symptom of spirit is non-duality. There is only joy. There is only peace. You do not recognize happiness at a spiritual level by the presence of unhappiness. No, that kind of happiness, which is the opposite of unhappiness, is at the mundane level. It's at the material world. That's not spiritual happiness. Spiritual happiness has no cause. It is not the cessation of misery that causes you to feel spiritual bliss, but it is something that is of causeless, and is an outpouring from the soul and from God. So it's very important to understand that wherever there is duality, there you are in the mind. The mind sees the world as positive or negative, good or bad, right or wrong. And this duality is what gives rise to our suffering. You see, duality was created to give us a choice. And that choice is about options, about, do you want to feel good or empowered or in control? That's when you make a choice. That's where when you can choose something, you will feel that you are powerful, you are empowered, you're in control. But when you have no choice, when things are inevitable, then you feel powerless and trapped and helpless. So choice was the first thing that was given to all of us, and that's encapsulated with the idea of free will. Now, why was free will given to us? Because you see, there's a very deep meaning and purpose behind it. Right? Let's find out what that meaning and purpose is. The meaning is this, that in fact, let me put it up on the screen so that you can begin to understand it a little more. Okay, so here's what I believe the choice is all about. We have a choice. We come to this world for 3 primary life lessons. The first of them is to understand, who am I? I'll explain about that a little more in a moment. Then who or what is God, right? And if you know who you are, you immediately start to have an experience of who or what is God, because we are a part of God. And then what is the connection or relationship we have with God? So with that in mind, we need to understand that the first part, which is the understanding of who am I, we need to have the choice of being that which we are not. We are spiritual beings, but to be able to understand ourselves truly, we also need to have the option to be that which we are not. And that which we are not, when we start walking on that path, when we disconnect with our true self, with our soul, we have no clue about it because no one teaches us about it. We start walking in the pathways of what is called evil. Evil is simply the opposite of that which we are. We are divine beings, and just like light has shadow, so also that which we are, when you look at the shadow of that, that's what you'd call evil. The second part of these 3 life lessons that I talked about was the understanding of who is God, or where did we come from. And every human being speculates on that, and all these scriptures have been given to help us understand it. But when we reject that, when we disconnect from that source of God, and we become an atheist, then at that time again we have walked away into the shadow. And we need to have that choice. That choice is given because you cannot impose. God does not impose upon us, does not force us. Which brings us to the third part, which is the connection between the two. And that connection is love. Now, when we seek love without God, as in what is called romantic love, and we don't find the love there, then we keep trying to push it. We keep trying to make that relationship that we have with this human being into this ideal romantic thing that we seek and crave, but we never fulfilled in it, we never quite get it. And then we're upset with them, we're disappointed, we're frustrated. But we don't stop to think, what is it that I'm really seeking? What I'm seeking is my relationship with God. You see, so in all of these 3, in trying to be something in the world, the ego is trying to be something in the world that it cannot be. And no matter how much you have, no matter how much power you have, or money you have, or beauty you have, it's never enough. But when you come back into the soul, you understand who you really are. There's no more striving to be anything. You already are everything you ever wanted to be and ever will be. When you find God, you feel a contentment that no amount of rejection of God will ever do. And again, I'm saying this is a lived experience. If someone's in a religion but isn't experiencing this, well, they're not quite there. God is not a religion. God does not have a religion. Religions are pathways with which to understand God, but we must get the fruit from the tree and not just have the tree. A tree with no fruit, it becomes a barren tree. And ultimately, that connection with God results in either a feeling of deep peace or a feeling of great love, or both. In fact, they both go together. So we are all engaged in a grand experiment, and for most of us it isn't working. We're not finding what we seek. Now, what are the tools to combat evil? I would say the number one tool, because the number one place where it resides is in your mind. And so the number one tool is being able to combat the mind, being able to learn how to tame it, which is why I did an entire series called Mind on a Leash. And if you haven't watched it yet, please go on YouTube. You'll find the playlist over there, Mind on a Leash. And it's just there to help you deal with your mind. And of course, all the meditation practices that you have, whichever kind appeals to you. I'm personally a great fan of mantra. Mantra is there. Man means mind and tra means to deliver or free the mind. So to free the mind, mantra is wonderful. I recommend it highly. Kirtan, japa, all of that. These are different processes. In kirtan, you sing together. In japa, you chant on the beads. But whichever way works for you, the point is to quiet the mind. It's like even in the Bible it says it, be still and know that I am God. Why? In stillness you experience God. So that's how you combat the evil that is in our minds. And what resources and support do we have? Well, there is all of us together. There's so much of support that has been given by all the wise teachers that have come to this planet to try to help us. Ultimately, the greatest support, the greatest help is in forming that connection with God. And when you form that connection, you have a direct link. You don't need faith anymore. You don't need to believe anymore. You have an experience. And that experience to me is nothing like it. It is the most powerful support you will have. It is the most powerful way in which to let grace into your life, to form that direct connection. So with that, I'd like to get started with the Bhagavatam. And today we're talking about some very evil beings, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So it all begins with the story of Diti and Kashyap. We've talked about that in the earlier couple of episodes. I found a picture of them here. Of course, an artist's rendition, and I hope that gives you an idea. And they had, as we've talked about earlier, sex at a time when it was very inappropriate. That is the time of sunset, twilight. That, according to the Vedas, is not a good time for conception. And anyway, they knew the better, but they still went ahead. Diti ended up giving birth to demonic twins, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Now, I know these names are difficult, but I'll put them on the screen for you in just a moment. When they were born, many natural disturbances and inauspicious planets such as Mars and Saturn shone brightly, and darkness reigned everywhere at the time of their birth. Earthquakes, comets, meteors, thunderbolts, winds uprooting trees, clouds of dust, high waves in the ocean, agitated rivers and lakes, and withering lotuses. Maybe we're seeing many of those symptoms right now. Maybe there are many such beings taking birth even now on this planet. We think it's because of climate change, but maybe there's other causes to it. I don't know, and I can only speculate. It also says at that time, dogs wailed, jackals howled, donkeys ran hither and thither, and cows yielded blood instead of milk. Everyone was seized with fear and thought that the dissolution of the universe was at hand. The Vedas talk about that, the dissolution of the universe, and it's interesting that the same thing is talked about by scientists now. But they knew about this tens of thousands of years ago. So these two boys, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, grew up to be exceedingly tall. They had steel-like bodies, and the earth shook at their every step. Hiranyakashipu, the elder brother, received a benediction from Brahma and was unafraid of death. He was proud and arrogant. He brought the entire universe under his control along with the help of his younger brother, Hiranyaksha. So, okay, it's time to show you some pictures, and that's Hiranyakashipu, engaged in tremendous meditation and tapasya, and ultimately gaining great powers, yogic powers. With the accumulation of those yogic powers, let me see, I don't think I put that on the screen there for you. Yeah, Hiranyakashipu. That's how you spell it. Okay, so he was the first, the elder brother, And then there was Hiranyaksha, who we'll come across in just a minute. Hiranyaksha was like an angry elephant. This is the younger brother. He too was unafraid of death and had tremendous bodily and mental strength. There was no checking him. And everyone, including the devas, the demigods, were terrified at his sight. In fact, he went out to the heavenly planets to fight with Indra, the king of the demigods, and all of them, including Indra, fled and hid. Like, come on, man, I'm looking for a fight. He wanted to fight. He wanted someone to fight with. Then he went to the bottom of the ocean and found Varun, the demigod who was in charge of the ocean. And Varun said to him, I'm too old for combat. You are so skilled, he says to Hiranyaksha. You are so skilled in war that I do not see anyone else but the most ancient person, Vishnu, who can give satisfaction in battle to you. So there's a little painting here of Varun, the demigod in charge of the ocean. And then he's recommending that Hiranyaksha go and fight with Vishnu. Now, keep in mind that Krishna is the supreme Godhead, even above Vishnu. Though many people think that Krishna comes from Vishnu, the Vedas don't tell us so. They tell us that Vishnu comes from Krishna. Krishna is the original source, the source of all creation, including all the devas, including Vishnu. So, yeah, I hope you got to see the pictures. All right, maybe you did and maybe you didn't. There was Vishnu. And before that was Varun. I hope I'd shown them to you earlier, but just in case I didn't, I'll showing them again. All right. It's confusing for me too. So Varun tells Hiranyaksha, the demon, he says, on reaching Vishnu, you will be rid of your pride at once, and you will lie down on the field of battle, surrounded by dogs, for eternal sleep. In order to exterminate wicked fellows like you and to show his grace to the virtuous, he assumes his various incarnations. That's a pretty rough statement being handed out by Varun, but let's see what lies next. So, at this time, something very interesting had happened, and it's something that I think science also speculates on, that the Earth had gone out of its orbit and had been submerged in the waters of the cosmic ocean. Clearly, all life on Earth would have been annihilated at that time, and Vishnu, at that point, in the form of Varaha, a boar incarnation, was engaged in bringing the Earth back to its place of orbit. So here's a picture that shows us that scene. Varaha, Vishnu, coming as a boar, picking up the Earth on his tusks and bringing it out of the waters that it had sunk into once it went out of orbit. Now, you may say, why would he come as... Okay, have you all been... Okay, just a minute. Let's see if I showed you that. That's Varaha. Are you seeing the images now? Just write it in the text. Write in the text if you're seeing the images or not. You should be. No. Wow. Oh, I see. Okay. My apologies. Right on. Okay. Okay, this is Varaha. Thank you so much for pointing it out. And this is... So Varaha is... on YouTube everyone was seeing it, but not on Zoom. I had not connected there. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be a little difficult to go back over all of them, but let me see if I can do that. I'll just, for the folks who are on Zoom, I'll go back and just show you all the different images that I had shown so far. Okay, so we had the first one over here, which was Hiranyakashipu. And then, and then we had, and unfortunately what happens in Zoom is that the images become very fuzzy and I don't know how to get rid of that. Then we have Varun, and then Vishnu. Okay, and so we've got that. Now we're coming into, we've talked about Varaha. So, we're talking of this guy called Hiranyaksha. I'm just going to refer to him as the demon. Seeing a gigantic boar holding the earth on its tusks, stopped and challenged him. He laughed out and he called out to Varaha and he said, "Oh,
Oh, an amphibious beast! This earth is entrusted to us, the inhabitants of the lower regions. You cannot take it from my presence and not be hurt by me. You rascal! You have been nourished by our enemies to kill us, and you have killed some demons by remaining invisible." So he's telling Vishnu, "Oh fool! Your power is only mystic, so today I shall enliven my kinsmen by killing you. When you fall dead, with your skull smashed by the mace hurled by my arms, the demigods and sages who worship you will also automatically cease to exist, like trees without roots."
okay." I hope that had some amusement for you. Varaha, the boar incarnation, continued to rise from the waters and brought the earth to the surface, and using his energy caused her to float. Meanwhile, the demon chased Varaha, roaring like thunder, saying,
Are you not ashamed of running away before a challenging adversary? There is nothing reproachable for shameless creatures. Indeed, we are.
Then Varaha replied, "Indeed, we are creatures of the jungle, and we are searching after hunting dogs like you." So Varaha is that Vishnu incarnation who's come like a boar. We are creatures of the jungle, and we are searching after hunting dogs like you. One who is freed from the entanglement of death has no fear from the loose talk in which you are indulging, for you are bound by the laws of death. Give up all your foolish talk and wipe out the cares of your kith and kin by slaying us. He says, come on, fight with me, attack me. One may be proud, yet he does not deserve a seat in an assembly if he fails to fulfill his promised word. The demon, being challenged, became angry and agitated, and he trembled in anger like a challenged cobra, hissing indignantly, all his senses shaken by wrath. He dealt Varaha a blow with his powerful mace. So now I'm going to switch over to a scene, and I hope that you'll see it. Here we go. There's Hiranyaksha and Varaha engaged in battle. Okay, it's gotten a little better on Zoom. Varaha moved aside and dodged the violent mace blow aimed at his chest, just as an accomplished yogi eludes death. He then took up his own mace and brandished it about. They then struck each other's huge maces, each enraged and seeking his own victory. There was keen rivalry between the two. Both sustained injuries on their bodies from the blows of each other's pointed maces, and each grew more and more enraged at the smell of blood on his person. In their eagerness to win, they performed maneuvers of various kinds, and their contest looked like an encounter between two forceful bulls. Brahma and all the demigods came to witness the fight and prayed to Varaha to kill the demon who had become the source of fear for everyone. Now keep in mind, this demon, Hiranyaksha, was actually one of the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. He was a highly evolved being who then, as we might have heard in our last episode, who then insulted these great sages, the four Kumars, the sons of Brahma, who had come to Vaikuntha to visit Vishnu. He had insulted them, and thinking they're just little kids, because they looked about 5 years in age, but they were just highly evolved beings. They'd just chosen to look like kids. And so those gatekeepers, when they insulted these, the sages were deeply offended and cursed them, said, you don't deserve to be here. You're somehow imposters who have come and taken up this place in the spiritual world. And so they cursed them. And then at that point, Vishnu interceded And at that point, then they made a compromise that these two gatekeepers would come as demons for 3 lifetimes and then come back. And Vishnu had a plan. He wanted to come to earth for specific reasons. One of these was to bring the earth, not to the earth, but come to this universe, to rescue the earth. And he wanted to do some fighting. It'd been a long time of peace and love. It's like, come on, we need a little action here. So, people think, oh, God is just all peace and love, but no. You can see from the example of Vishnu here and Varaha, the incarnation he takes, that he loves a good fight. And it's all is part of his Leela, part of his pastimes. It's all known exactly how it's going to turn out, but he just wants the challenge. It's why we have it in us. What is within us is also within God. Anyway, back to the story. So Varaha heartily laughed and accepted Brahma's prayer with a glance laden with love. So Varaha, the boar, looked over to Brahma very kindly, because Varaha is begging him, listen, get rid of this guy right away. He's been so much of trouble for it. Don't let him mess around here. What if he survives? What if he lives? Brahma is in fear, and so are all the other demigods, Like, just kill him, man. Just come on. Varaha then struck the demon on the chin with his mace, which then slipped from his hand. Varaha's mace slipped from his hand and it started falling downward. It looked splendid as it blazed, whirling downward. And seeing this, the demigods panicked in alarm. Oh my God, now he doesn't have a weapon. What's going to happen? The demon respected the laws of single combat and did not strike his unarmed foe. That's the way of the Vedic time. They would not strike an unarmed foe. Vishnu acknowledged the demon's love of righteousness and then invoked his Sudarshan Chakra, and I'm going to show you in just a moment what that is. As his disc spun, the demigods cried, "May victory attend you. Pray dispatch him. Play no more with him." I think it's time to show you what the Sudarshan Chakra looks like. This here is the Sudarshan Chakra. Vishnu holds this. Krishna pulls it out from time to time. I'm just waiting for it to clear up for those who are on Zoom, and I hope they can see it. Okay, I don't know what happens. It's the disc of Vishnu. Okay, I don't know quite why that is not showing up. So remember again, we talked about how fear is a big part of our lives, and all of us are subjected to it. Even great demigods like Brahma are subjected to fear. Why? Because we are in these perishable bodies, these human bodies or even demigod bodies, but they're all subjected to birth and death and old age and disease. So all of us are perishable beings in our body. But it is the soul that is fearless. And if we want to find that place of fearlessness, we have to learn how to go beyond the mind, beyond the body, and connect with that part of us to become truly fearless. So the demon with fearful tusks stared at Varaha as if to burn him with his gaze. He hissed like a serpent and sprung into the air, and aiming his mace at Varaha said, "You are slain." At this point, Varaha, the boar, knocked down the mace with his left foot and gave it back to the demon. "Here, take up your weapon and try again." The demon threw his mace again at Varaha, who caught it. Being humiliated and frustrated, the demon then threw a trident of flaming fire with all his strength. Varaha then tore it to pieces with his Sudarshan Chakra. Once again, let's see if I can show you the Sudarshan Chakra and see if it's a little clearer. For those who are on Zoom, I'm sorry it's not coming. I don't know how to solve that problem. All right. Anyway, the demon, roaring aloud, then struck Varaha on the chest with his fist. And Varaha felt it like an elephant might when struck with a wreath of flowers. The demon then employed many conjuring tricks, and those witnessing them were filled with alarm and thought the end of the universe was near. The demon conjured fierce winds that began to blow from all directions, spreading darkness occasioned by dust and hailstorms. Stones came in volleys from every corner, as if thrown by machine guns. The sky rained pus and hair and blood and stool and urine and bones. Naked demonesses armed with tridents appeared, with their hair hanging loose. Cruel and savage slogans were uttered by hosts of demons who all either marched on foot or rode on horses, elephants, or chariots. Sounds like quite a scene. Varaha once again used his beloved Sudarshan Chakra and annihilated all of these magical forces. The demon then attacked Varaha, trying to embrace him with his arms to crush him. And when that didn't work, he struck him forcefully with his fists. Varaha then slapped him in the root of the ear. The demon's ears bulged out of their sockets, his arms and legs broke, and he fell down dead like a gigantic tree uprooted by the wind. Brahma then commented on how the demon had met such a blessed death. The demigod said, "All obeisance is unto you. You have assumed the form of a boar for the purpose of maintaining the world. Fortunately for us, this demon who has tormented us is now slain by you, and we are at ease. We offer our devotion to your lotus feet." You might ask, why would Vishnu choose to come as a boar? And the answer to you is, why not? He can do anything he likes. He's having fun. We take it seriously. We take all the stuff, all the problems that occur in our life very seriously. We think that our problems are insurmountable and grave. But what we don't realize is that by the blessings of God, by having trust in God, by having devotion, we will be protected. These stories are just there to illustrate this one singular point, that by trusting in God, we will be taken care of. The idea that God has your back, and that even when things look bad, you will survive. I was hearing the story of Viktor Frankl just a few days ago, and he was talking about how in the Nazi concentration camps, the Jews were taken there and stripped of everything. He says, we had no clothes. We would have to go around in the same things for 6 months. Dirty, to the point where you couldn't even tell you're wearing clothes. And they were they would have to have a shower, but there were no towels to dry off, and it was cold winter. He says, it's amazing what the human body can do when you have prayer, when you have a sense of a higher power, when you have a sense of devotion, when you have a sense of community, when you have a sense of faith. It's amazing what we're capable of doing. And he says, the moment you don't, here now, people are told, oh, if you have a shower and you step out, you're going to get sick and you're going to get a fever. Well, we've come to believe these things, and so it is. But if you don't, if you choose to believe differently, if you choose to believe that your body can heal, if you choose to believe that cold will not affect you, if you choose to deeply believe, just like the yogis do, they sit in the Himalayas in ice and snow with no clothes on, and nothing happens to them. They don't get frostbite. They don't die. And they don't even eat. They just live on fresh air, basically. Sometimes a few roots and berries. But the idea is we are capable of incredible things if we would allow ourselves to believe in the possibilities of what it means to be human. When we believe, miracles happen. Great and amazing things happen. In this case, Vishnu comes and incarnates as a boar to play around with these guys and to rescue the earth. Certainly there are troubles in this world, and that never stops. There will always be troubles. But having a deep trust in God, having a deep faith, that allows us to be able to live life from a very different platform. You begin to trust life. You begin to trust this human organism. You begin to trust God. And you know that you're going to be taken care of no matter what happens. That's the beauty of this path. Vishnu then placed the earth in its own orbit and returned to his abode, where there is always an uninterrupted festival. This is such a great statement. Vishnu returned to his own abode, right, where there is always an uninterrupted festival. Think about it. People wonder what happens in heaven, right? An uninterrupted festival. And last time, if you haven't watched it, please do. There is a vivid description of what the spiritual world looks like. How within the light are the planets of Vaikuntha. And on those Vaikuntha planets are forms of Vishnu, different forms of Vishnu according to the person's belief and faith. And in each of those planets are spiritual beings, beings who have spiritual form, spiritual meaning not subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. And though in those forms, they are engaged in worshipping and loving and serving Vishnu and each other. And then the Bhagavatam goes on to say, anyone who hears, chants, or takes pleasure in the wonderful narration, in this wonderful narration, is at once relieved of the results of karma and sinful activities. So what? Anyone who hears, chants, or takes pleasure in the wonderful narration of the incarnations of Vishnu, such as the incarnation of Varaha, is at once relieved of the results of karma and sinful activities. This most sacred narrative confers extraordinary merit, wealth, fame, longevity, and all the objects of one's desire. One who listens to it at the last moment of his life is transferred to the supreme abode of God. So with that, we're going to end the reading from the Bhagavatam. I'd love to take up your questions, see what people have come up with. I'm going to transfer over to here. Okay. So let's see what all of you have been writing. Betsy writes, she's been feeling disconnected from her spiritual practices lately. Betsy, I have a little piece of advice for you. We often get stuck on a particular way of spiritual practice. What I've learned is this: integrate your spiritual practice into everything you do in life. Make everything you do a spiritual practice. If you're going to drink some water, make that a spiritual practice. If you're breathing, make that a spiritual practice. If you're eating, make that a spiritual practice. Make it so that everything you do is a spiritual practice. The work you do, make it as an offering to the divine, to God. Everything can be spiritualized. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that whatever you do as work, do as an offering unto me. Whatever you eat, do it as an offering to me. And if you do it with love, I will accept it. Because it's not the food that he wants, it's not your work, it's not your money, he doesn't care less about that. It's the love. Love is the currency with which you are able to come to God. Are there any questions any of you have? Are there any thoughts, any observations, any things you'd like to know more about? I'm not feeling very well, but this will pass, as it always does. And very quickly, in fact. So that is my declaration. But in this moment in time, I'm struggling a little bit. But if you all have any questions, I'd love to know. Feel free to write them in the chat if you don't want to speak, or if you'd like to speak, come on up. Those of you that are on the Zoom call, I'd love to have you here and bring you in on the screen. Any questions at all? Can you share more about the disc chakra? Oh, the Sudarshan chakra. Yes, thanks for asking. Sudarshan. Let's see if I can give you back that image again. You'll always find this with Vishnu and even with Krishna. when there is an extreme situation, he'll pull out that Sudarshan chakra. All right? Okay. So you'll find Vishnu holding 4 things at the same time. He's got 4 hands, and the 4 hands have got 2 hands that are holding on to, one is a lotus, and the other is a conch shell. And the other 2 hands are holding weapons. One is the Sudarshan chakra and a mace. A mace is a big, huge weapon for striking. That's what they were using here between the fight with Varaha and Hiranyaksha. There's times where, you need something that can just go like a missile and just go and destroy something or someone. And then there's times where, so he's always got his weapons there. All right, if there's no more questions, then we'll end early today. Thank you all for being here, and lots of love, and wish you all a very happy New Year. Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Cece's got a question. God has a sense of humor. He gave us all free will, knowing that eventually we'd be led back to Him, this lifetime or another. Yes, you are absolutely right. And I do see this as a sense of humor. See, the idea of giving us free will was to give us choice, because love cannot be imposed. You cannot force someone to love you. So if the relationship between us and God is one of love, God doesn't force us to love Him. That needs to be chosen. So you need to have all opportunity to hate God, to disconnect from God, to want nothing to do with God. And when you've tried that out, you can come back and say, hey, that didn't work for me. I want to know who you are. What's it all about? Why are we here? And so there is a sense of humor, definitely. And there is a sense of freedom and choice. And you can take millions of lifetimes, if you like, being here. Or you can accelerate your path back. And the way to accelerate that path is through the heart. The heart is the fastest way to reach God. And Betsy writes, I really feel connected to God when I'm in nature, and especially with animals. Absolutely. Because that's where you find God in the pure and pristine state. Now, what makes humans so difficult is the presence of the mind. That's why it's very difficult to find and experience God with human beings. And the more we can be out of our mind, the more pleasant we will be, the more wonderful we're going to be with each other and with nature and with life. So it's very important to become free, because this is where all the chaos is created. This is where all conflict is created in our mind. This is where all separation is created. And that's why the most important practice in spirituality is to learn how to tame the mind. For those of you that came late, I want to remind you, I have this entire course I've put free on YouTube called Mind on a Leash. Read that and learn about how to be able to overcome the mind's control over you and become the boss of your own mind. And also, of course, all the meditation practices are there to help you as well. So, good, lovely questions. Thank you. So how to find God with other humans, because I struggle with humans. You need to look beyond the surface, Betsy. You need to look beyond the surface. On the surface, humans are definitely extremely difficult to deal with and very hard to navigate. But if you go beyond the surface and you go to the heart of the person and you begin to see through their words what lies within, you will have developed the ability to really reach out to their soul. In fact, the same is true for all of life. It's very easy to do with nature, as you said. But the circumstances that happen in our life, we get really caught up by circumstances and situations and what somebody said or did, or even the things that happened in our life, whether it's the weather or whether it's, the events, the economy, whatever. We get caught up in the circumstances, and then we think that the circumstances are causing our unhappiness. That's not true. That's giving a lot of power to people and to circumstances. What we really need to be doing is taking back that power and recognize the power is here. I can choose to see you as I wish to. I can choose to interpret that circumstance any way I want to. That is in my hands. If I believe the circumstance that I was born in poverty and therefore will always stay poor, well, then I believed it. But there are many who have overcome their circumstances and gone way beyond them. Whether those circumstances were poverty or disease, or they had, I know of this wonderful guy who has no arms and no legs. And yes, most people would give up on life like that, but he's become a world-renowned motivational speaker. So he didn't buy into the circumstances. He chose to interpret them differently and to take what was an obstacle and use it to strengthen his courage and his spirit and his connection with God and with all of life. Cece's asking a great question. Don't we have to understand and love ourselves before we can understand and love others? And you are right, Cece. We need to love ourselves, but before you try to love yourself, everybody is talking about loving themselves. But I've got to tell you something. It is almost impossible to do. Why do I say this? Because the very instrument you are using to love yourself, it does not know how to love. It does not know how to love another human. It does not know how to love yourself. If you want to really love, you have to go beyond your mind. Because the mind doesn't know how to love. Its love is always conditional. Its love is always based on, if I did good, then I'm lovable. If I didn't do good, or if I made a mistake, or if I screwed up, or I did something bad, then I'm no longer lovable. So you're living with something that is very dualistic and very conditional, the mind. You have to go past the level of the mind to be able to even love yourself. Now, I know that with animals and with nature, it's very easy to do because they are so, especially animals, are so expressive in their love that we have no choice. You're right, Cece. We need to drop out of our mind and sink into our heart. Exactly. But the heart, that is, Krishna says, I am seated in everyone's heart. From me alone comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So the heart is the place where God resides. Yes, we need to drop into our heart. And then we need to see the world as God sees the world, as God sees us. And then it becomes very easy to love ourselves. Very easy. With all your flaws. You don't need to be better. You don't need to do better. You don't need to be perfect. And you don't need to be deserving. And you don't need to be worthy. Those are all illusions created by the mind. In fact, it's a myth created by the mind that you need to be deserving. No. A real love is unconditional. And unconditional love does not require that you are deserving or worthy or good enough. You are lovable and adorable and wonderful exactly the way you are with all your flaws. You are not even this mind and body. You are the soul that resides within the body. So once you start to quiet your mind and see yourself in this way, yes, it does become easier by self-love to be able to then love others in that way. When you stop judging yourself, it'll become easier to stop judging others. When you stop seeing yourself as worthy or unworthy, good enough or, then when you break out of that trap, it certainly becomes easier to do the same to others because you've practiced it here. What you have not given to yourself, you cannot give to another. What you do not have, you cannot give. So it's the same idea. Wow, you guys had great questions today. Great comments, great observations. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to wind up. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you next time. Good night.